The Indiana Fever story has exploded into something far bigger than basketball. It has become a full-scale narrative of power, protection, pressure, and a league suddenly forced to confront the consequences of how one generational star is being treated. Caitlin Clark didn't just enter the WNBA as a rookie, she entered as a cultural earthquake, instantly shifting ratings, arenas, media attention, and expectations in a way the league had never experienced before. But with that spotlight came a brutal physical reality that nobody could ignore behind the highlight reels. Every possession became a battle. Every screen carried weight. Every drive to the basket came with contact that felt heavier, more intentional, more personal. And as the games stacked up, so did the conversation. Was this simply rookie adjustment, or was something deeper happening on the floor? Because when a single player is absorbing a disproportionate level of hard contact night after night, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a pattern the league refused to address. The Fever watched it unfold in real time. The collisions, the frustration, the moments where Clark hit the floor and stayed there just a second longer than expected. And while critics debated intensity versus targeting, Indiana made a decision that changed everything about their identity. They weren't going to wait for protection. They were going to build it. That's where the transformation began, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. The front office started reshaping the roster not just around scoring or spacing, but around presence, physicality, and response. Players who didn't just compete, but who answered. Sophie Cunningham became a key symbol of that shift, an experienced guard with toughness wired into her game. Someone who doesn't just absorb contact but reacts to it in a way that sends a message across the court. Not here, not anymore. Alongside her, the addition of physical, experienced forwards like Maya Hines-Allen brought a different kind of edge, championship-level resilience, paint control, and a mindset built in playoff environments where every inch is earned, not given. Then came the depth guard rotation, designed to prevent Clark from carrying unsustainable minutes, ensuring she wouldn't just survive the season but sustain dominance through it. The narrative quickly evolved into something almost cinematic, a superstar being guarded not just by defenders, but by an entire structural philosophy built around her safety and longevity. And whether people agreed with it or not, one thing became undeniable: the Fever were no longer a passive team reacting to physicality. They were becoming a team that answered it. Every hard foul, every aggressive matchup, every moment of confrontation was now met with immediate pushback, not escalation for chaos, but escalation for control. The message was no longer subtle. Indiana was constructing a roster that would not allow its franchise player to be physically worn down in silence. And that shift sent shockwaves through the league discussion, because it blurred the line between competitive toughness and strategic enforcement. Critics called it unnecessary. Supporters called it overdue. But inside the Fever organization, it was simply described as survival at the highest level of competition. As preseason conversations turned into expectations for the next campaign, one phrase kept surfacing in discussions around Indiana: they are no longer a team that can be pushed around. They have layers now. They have answers now. And more importantly, they have players who don't blink when things get physical. That reality changed how opponents would have to prepare, because you can't isolate a star anymore when the supporting cast is built to respond instantly. The Fever weren't just trying to win games, they were trying to redefine the environment those games were played in. And at the center of it all stood Caitlin Clark, still the gravitational force of every possession, but now surrounded by a structure designed to absorb impact, distribute responsibility, and return pressure in equal measure. And that's where the second wave of this transformation becomes even more intense, because this isn't just about one player or one off-season adjustment anymore. It's about an entire system being rebuilt with intent, attitude, and confrontation baked into its foundation. Indiana didn't just add talent, they added identity. They added players who have lived through physical basketball, who understand contact not as a shock but as a language. Maya Hines-Allen brings championship DNA and a reputation built on controlling the paint, on refusing to be moved, on making every drive to the rim feel like a negotiation opponents lose. Sophie Cunningham brings perimeter toughness, defensive resistance, and a willingness to step directly into conflict when games tilt toward physical intimidation. And Tyasha Harris adds something just as critical: composure under pressure, a stabilizing guard presence who can relieve Clark without the offense collapsing into chaos, ensuring that the system doesn't break when the star rests. Together, this creates something rare, a rotation where toughness is not isolated to one player but distributed across positions, meaning opponents can no longer target a single weak link or rely on physical momentum to destabilize Indiana's rhythm. Every lineup now carries resistance. Every substitution maintains structure. Every possession has response capability built into it. That's what makes this version of the Fever fundamentally different from what came before. They are no longer just a young, exciting team built around a generational scorer. They are a layered, physical, strategically aggressive unit designed to hold its ground for 48 minutes without soft spots. And that shift changes everything about how opponents will approach them. No more easy intimidation. No more isolated pressure on Clark without consequence. No more assumption that Indiana will simply absorb contact and move on. Instead, every action now carries reaction. Every escalation carries an answer. And that changes the psychology of the game before it even begins. But even beyond the roster construction, the deeper story is about intent. Indiana made a conscious decision to stop being reactive and start being protective in the most strategic sense possible. They recognized that talent alone wasn't enough in a league where physicality can dictate availability, rhythm, and long-term success. So they built around durability, response, and depth. They built around ensuring that their most important player isn't left isolated in high-pressure environments where every possession feels like survival. And whether people interpret that as toughness, aggression, or overcorrection, the reality is simple. The Fever are entering a phase where they will not be defined by how much pressure they take, but by how effectively they respond to it. That's the new identity. That's the new expectation. And as the league prepares for what comes next, one thing is clear: Indiana is no longer just trying to compete in games. They are trying to control the terms of those games from the opening tip to the final possession. What comes next for the Indiana Fever is not just another season on the schedule. It is a pressure test of everything they have built, every decision they have justified, and every narrative that has formed around the league's most polarizing and most watched young superstar. Because at this point, Caitlin Clark is no longer just playing basketball in the traditional sense of the word. She is operating inside an environment that reacts to her presence before she even touches the ball, where every screen feels loaded. Every defensive rotation feels amplified, and every moment of contact gets analyzed through the lens of intensity versus intent. And Indiana knows it. That awareness is exactly what reshaped the entire architecture of the roster around her. This is no longer a team built on hope, youth, or offensive flash. It is a team constructed with a very deliberate understanding of how quickly momentum in professional sports can turn when physicality becomes a factor in controlling rhythm. So what they have done is build layers, not just talent. They have built responses, not just rotations. They have built an identity that doesn't simply rely on scoring more points, but on ensuring that the emotional and physical temperature of the game never gets out of their control. And that is where everything becomes more complex, more interesting, and far more intense than a normal rebuild story. Because now every matchup against Indiana carries a psychological dimension that didn't exist before. Opponents are no longer just preparing for Clark's shooting range, her passing vision, or her ability to shift a defense with a single dribble. They are also preparing for the fact that every aggressive action will be met with resistance, every momentum swing will be challenged, and every attempt to physically dominate will be answered in real time by players who were specifically added for that purpose. That changes scouting reports. That changes game planning. That changes how teams